Welcome to the Breakup Recovery Podcasts by your host, Barbara Stevens. Discover the wisdom and remarkable insights of Barbara Stevens, breakup recovery mentor, author, and public speaker. Barbara offers programs and solutions for any breakup so you can turn your life around, create lasting changes for the better, and embrace life again.
Hello and welcome to Breakup Recovery Podcast. I'm Barbara Stevens and I'm a breakup recovery mentor. And in this episode, I have with me Abi Shepherd. So welcome, Abi.
Hi.
Abi, tell me about your breakup or your divorce.
Okay, so it was about 2 years ago. It was just before Christmas. Things had not been going too well in the last sort of 6 months of our marriage. And after a day trip to Bruges in Belgium, which was me, my ex-husband, the 2 kids, and our au pair. We got back, I went to sleep, and then the next morning I woke up and the house was empty and there were nobody about. And then I started receiving text messages from my husband saying that he wanted to break up, that he'd had enough of our marriage and he wanted a divorce. And it turned out that he had feelings for our au pair, who we'd had with us for about 18 months. And so the long and short of it is that he's now with her, he's married to her, and we're divorced. And that's pretty much it in a nutshell. Obviously, it didn't all happen overnight. I didn't move out of the house until the following April. So about 4 or 5 months. I was living with 2 of them. I was in our bedroom, he was in her bedroom. Yeah, very difficult time, difficult thing to adjust to. We'd been together for quite a long time. We'd been together for 20 years and married for about 16 and a half. So quite a shock to the system. But I sort of knew right from the get-go that it was right. It didn't stop it from being painful and distressing. But I've been so much happier, bearing in mind that I've got some mental health problems, so I've had periods of depression in between. But overall, I'm happier. I'm on my own. I've got my kids with me every other week, and I've sort of made decisions for my life that I would never have made when I was with him.
Abi, how did you actually feel at the time?
It's hard to think back to that time. I was shocked. I kind of knew it was coming, but sort of subconsciously. I didn't actually know, but I had a few feelings, particularly in the day before it happened. I noticed a look in the car when we were driving back from Bruges, and I noticed him looking at her, and I remember feeling upset about it, but not quite knowing what it was that I was observing. Yeah, I was completely blown away. I'd never lived on my own before. I moved straight in from my parents' house to a flat with him when I was about 18. You know, being single after 20 years of being with someone and never having lived on my own, it was scary.
What strategies or what did you put in place so that you actually got through this breakup?
I have my blog, which I wrote in. I didn't write about the involvement of the au pair. I just wrote about how the breakup was affecting me, how I was feeling in myself. You know, just expressing it all, getting it all out onto the page. So, you know, if someone doesn't write a blog and maybe writing a diary or something like that, I'm on Facebook, and while I try and, you know, I don't get it at my ex-husband or anything, but I would express how I'm feeling. I started up a private Facebook group of very trusted friends, and then I could sort of vent on there a little bit about how I was feeling, if I was feeling really annoyed or angry or upset over some particular thing that had happened. My family were absolutely amazing, supporting me. Me and my sister grew a lot closer. My parents were there throughout the whole thing, supporting me. And my friends have been amazing. I've lost some friends in the process of the whole breakup. But really, you know, they say that you, in a situation like that you really get to know who your real friends are. And I've had some, you know, one particular friend I've known since I was in college, and she's been absolutely amazing. And I've met new people since I split up from my husband that have also become very close friends. I also joined a singles group, which I found through Facebook, and I've met some really good people through there. So just having a really good support network around me is what sort of carried me through it.
So, Abi, tell me a little bit more about your blog. What is it called and where can people find it?
Well, it's called Mum in a Hurry, and it is just www.muminahurry.com. I started it after my children were born. I was in a job part-time, and then I got made redundant and I started working full-time, and it was sort of to be a diary of how I was finding being a full-time working mum. It's a diary blog. I just write what I'm feeling. Something particular has happened, I write about it. I wrote, obviously, a lot about the separation and divorce. I've written some poetry on there. It's my little space on the internet that I can share my thoughts and feelings.
I love your website, Mum in a Hurry, Learning to Believe.
That changed. That's since the breakup. Before the breakup, the main header, like a drawing type thing of, you couldn't tell who they were, but as they were sort of representations of me, my husband, the two children, big house. I had a red car, 2 dogs, so there were like chickens dotted all around the place, which I really loved that header, but obviously it's now no longer relevant. So after a little while, I decided to change it. I got a tattoo when my flat came through, when the sale of my own place, which was a big thing for me to be moving out on my own, my first ever place of my own. I got a tattoo on my wrist. I got this tattoo and I wanted butterflies. I've always been a bit of a fan of butterflies. I got the word believe tattooed on my wrist next to these 2 butterflies. So there's one sort of perching next to the word and then the other one is flying off. So to me, they represent starting again, believing that life can be, a butterfly starts in a cocoon, starts off being something very different, and then it emerges. And I think that can be the same as what happens when you've been through a divorce. You may take a couple of years, but you come out different, and it can be better.
Abi, you've talked a bit about in your blog about your mental health issues. Can you tell me a little bit how that has affected you and coping with your breakup and your divorce?
Yeah, so at the time of the split, I had been in the process, probably for the previous 6 months, of going to doctors and getting referrals and trying to find out why my antidepressants hadn't been working and why I was just actually getting worse. And they eventually put me on some medication for bipolar to see if it would work, and it did start working. I'd only been on the medication for about a month before my ex split up with me, so it was quite a difficult time anyway, and then to have to deal with that on top of it. I was told I was diagnosed with bipolar in the end, and it's been difficult. The medication definitely helps. In the past, I've had times where I've gone and spent quite a lot of money, not stupid amounts, not thousands and thousands, but, I bought a computer without telling my husband. I bought an iPad secretly and hid it. I've gone on shopping sprees with makeup or clothes or something and then tried to hide them in the wardrobe. It was all that sort of behavior that actually in the end made them think that I might be bipolar, because those times would sort of be followed by periods of depression, and I would get involved in ideas. I'd have ideas. I was going to make bath bombs and sell them, and that would be my business, and then I would quit my job and do that. Or singing in a band at one point. I started working for Forever Living, which is like a company where you'd have parties and sell products, sell them to all your friends, and you've got to try and get your friends to join up. It was all stuff like that, and I would throw myself in headfirst for a couple of months, and then I would lose all interest in it, and it would go by the wayside. So I might have spent money on buying products and all of this with an intention of making it into a full-blown business, and then it would all just crumble because I would go through a depressive phase. So it's been more manageable since the breakup, pretty much. I think my marriage actually made the depression worse. I think I was unhappy because I was unhappy in my marriage. And I don't think I actually came to realise that until afterwards, when things started to get easier. going through that, but my ups and downs weren't as extreme. Apart from a few periods of time, when the divorce came through, I went through quite a low phase, very low, and where I was having thoughts of hurting myself and feeling like nobody would miss me if I was gone, that kind of thing. And the same thing happened when my ex remarried. I went through another phase, and that was when I lost my job, in fact, which was back in November this year, just gone.
So did your husband ever use your mental illness in any of the negotiations regarding your divorce or separation, how you were going to divide the assets, how you were going to look after the children and co-parent?
No, he never brought it into the co-parenting thing. We agreed between ourselves that we both felt that neither of the other parties should have to only have the kids at weekends. We both wanted to be parents actively, so we agreed that we would share them equally, and that was right from the start. He never sort of said, you're not fit to look after them. He's never said anything like that. However, he divorced me. I know technically I probably should have divorced him, although I think in the UK, if it's for infidelity, you have to divorce within 6 months. So he divorced me because he suggested it might be easier for me because I wouldn't have to do any of the paperwork and he would pay for it because I wasn't going to pay for it. It was him pretty much that instigated it, so I felt that he should pay for it. So he divorced me, but in his reasoning, he put a lot of my symptoms down. Those were what he put down as the reason for wanting to divorce me. So that was a bit of a blow, but he did tell me beforehand, so I didn't have to open the divorce paperwork and read it and kind of be shocked. He was like, this is what I'm going to put down because I don't know what else to put down.
Okay.
It has had an impact. I mean, I do have times when I struggle with the kids, but I just get on with it. I ring a friend if I'm really struggling. And actually, in a way, sometimes I find it easier when I've got the children because when I'm on my own, I don't have as much to do. Well, previously, before I started my most recent work, which I can tell you about in a minute, but I didn't have as much to do in the evenings. I'd finish work, come home. All I've got to do is eat my dinner and sit down and watch television, then go to bed. Whereas when I've got the children, I'm busy. I've got to put them to bed. I've got to make them their hot milk in the evening. And my son doesn't sleep very well, so he comes out several times in the evening before he eventually falls asleep. So I'm busier, and therefore I feel needed, and it helps in some ways, even though, occasionally they'll be playing up at the weekend and I'll feel, like this.
Thank you, Abi, for coming on to Breakup Recovery podcast and telling us your story and how honest you are about your mental illness and about your breakup story, how it's affected you. So thank you very much.
Can I just add quickly that one of the things that I've recently done, I lost my job and I decided that I wanted to stay around for my children a little bit more when I have them. So I've decided, though, I'm studying journalism and doing an online course in journalism, and in the meantime I'm doing care work, which is something that I would never have considered. I've always done office work, and it's completely different and it's exhausting, but it is so rewarding. I never would have had the guts to do this before I split up with my ex-husband because he was very money-oriented. I'm at risk now of possibly not making the bills, but I'm going to make it work. I'm cutting down on everything, and I'm doing something that I enjoy. So I just wanted to say, finding my direction now, 2 years on.
That's great, Abi. So thank you for coming on Breakup Recovery podcast.
Thank you for having me.
If you feel that you are still struggling with your breakup, if you are experiencing intense feelings of anger, resentment and bitterness, and it is taking over your life, I'm here to help you in this area of moving on and coping after your breakup. I work with my clients one-on-one through my mentoring program. If you want to learn more about how we can work together, contact me via email or my Facebook page, Barbara Stevens Breakup Recovery Mentor, and book in for my free 30-minute sounding board session, and we can set up a time that suits. In this free session, you will walk away with clarity about your situation, strategies and tools to start building the future you deserve.
so together we can start your journey of recovery. All my information is on my website, www.barbarastevens.com.au. If you don't want to miss an episode of Breakup Recovery Podcast, subscribe on iTunes, and I would appreciate it if you could take the time to write a review and rate the podcast. Also, feel free to message me with any questions that you have about Breakup Recovery podcasts or subjects that you want me to cover in future podcast episodes by clicking on the contact button of my website or my Facebook page. I'm always looking for ways to help you recover from your breakup. And the last thing I'd like to say is, be gentle on yourself. You deserve happiness.
If you would like to hear previous Breakup Recovery podcasts, visit barbarastevens.com.au. Connect with Barbara Stevens on social media with Barbara Stevens Breakup Recovery Mentor on Facebook and at You'll Be Okay on Twitter. Read further blogs, view webinar replays, and download your free ebook, 3 Easy Steps to Surviving Your Breakup, and much more at barbarastevens.com.au.